My fiancée pushed me into a $785,000 house I couldn't afford, while secretly seeing someone else. So I canceled the wedding and took control of my future. I'm a 31-year-old male working as a mechanical engineer at an aerospace company in Seattle. I'm an average guy, slightly overweight, and I'm trying to work on that. I have a receding hairline that I'm learning to accept, and I'm definitely more comfortable discussing tensile strength than fashion trends. I grew up in a middle-class family in Michigan and put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. I landed a decent position right out of school. Then I met Jessica. She was 28, a marketing executive at a prestigious firm, and way out of my league in terms of looks. We met at my friend Kyle's birthday party 3 years ago. She was his co-worker's +1, and I still have no idea why she gave me her number that night. Women like her, who look like they walked off a magazine cover, don't usually go for guys like me. But we clicked, or at least I thought we did. The first year was amazing. She was fun, adventurous, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. Even though aerospace engineering isn't exactly thrilling dinner conversation, she'd ask questions about my projects, send me supportive texts during big presentations, and even wore this dorky NASA t-shirt I bought her to bed sometimes. Looking back, there were red flags from the beginning, but love is blind, right? She made little comments about my potential, suggesting I could definitely be a senior engineer if I just worked more, or how I should dress better for client meetings to get noticed by management. At the time, I thought she was being supportive. Now I realize she was trying to mold me into something I wasn't. About a year in, things started to change. Her suggestions turned into criticisms. Suddenly, my apartment was too small for an established professional. My perfectly functional Honda was embarrassing next to her BMW. My friends were holding me back because they weren't ambitious enough. My brother Alex, who works in construction and has been my best friend since childhood, was gradually excluded from our social events because he was too blue-collar for her circle. But I was in love, so I started changing. I bought nicer clothes, attended her pretentious work parties, and laughed at unfunny jokes from her boss. I saw my brother less, and even turned down a promotion opportunity in Chicago because she insisted we needed to stay in Seattle near her family and social connections. When I proposed after 2 years, she cried and said yes. Immediately, she started planning a wedding that would cost more than my annual salary. It's an investment in our social capital, she'd say, whenever I brought up the budget. These connections will pay off for both of us. So I opened a special savings account and began putting away chunks of my bonuses and overtime pay. Eventually, I had $2,500 set aside just for wedding deposits. Jessica never contributed a cent, claiming she was saving for our future in other ways. I didn't question it because, well, I was an idiot. 6 months before the wedding, she began pushing hard for us to buy a house. Not just any house, but a $785,000 townhouse in the most expensive part of Bellevue, where all her executive friends lived. "Mike, we have to have a place in this neighborhood if we want to be taken seriously," she insisted, completely ignoring the fact that the mortgage payments would stretch my finances to the breaking point. But again, I agreed. Love makes you stupid. We signed preliminary mortgage documents with me as the primary borrower since my credit score was better. She was already planning renovations and had created multiple Pinterest boards for each room. She even told her parents they'd have a dedicated guest suite with a private bathroom for when they visited from Portland. Everything was set. The wedding was 4 months away, and the house closing was scheduled for a month after that. I was stressed about money, but figured we'd make it work somehow. I remember sitting down one night with a spreadsheet, trying to figure out how I could possibly afford the mortgage payments, the wedding expenses, and still have enough left over for basic necessities. The math just wasn't working. Our combined income should have been enough. But Jessica was adamant about keeping our finances separate until after the wedding. "It's just cleaner that way," she'd say. But somehow, all the major expenses were landing on my side of the ledger. That night, I tried to have a serious conversation about finances. I showed her my spreadsheet, explained my concerns, and suggested we might need to look at a more affordable neighborhood. She looked at me like I'd suggested we live in a cardboard box. "Mike, do you want us to be successful or not? This neighborhood isn't just about a house. It's all about connections, opportunities, and being surrounded by people who can elevate our careers." But I insisted we can't afford it, not unless you're planning to contribute significantly to the mortgage. She sighed dramatically. "I told you I'm handling the wedding vendors and honeymoon planning. Plus, after we're married, I'll be up for a major promotion that will double my salary. We just need to present the right image until then." That promotion was news to me, but it gave me hope. Maybe she was right. Perhaps this short-term financial strain would pay off in the long run. So I ignored the knot in my stomach and agreed to move forward with the house plans. We spent the next few weekends attending open houses, meeting with interior designers. Apparently, our furniture wasn't good enough for the new place, and going to dinner parties with her friends from the neighborhood. I felt increasingly out of place, but Jessica seemed to thrive on it all. She introduced me as her fiancé, the aerospace engineer, like I was some kind of status symbol rather than a person. Then came the text that changed everything. I remember the exact moment my whole life flipped upside down. I was standing in line at QFC with a basket full of random items, pizza rolls, fancy scented trash bags, and some energy drinks to help me through a big project deadline. My phone buzzed, and I saw Jessica's name pop up. I didn't think much of it at first, figuring it was about dinner plans or more wedding venue drama that had been consuming our conversations lately. Instead, I got 8 words that felt like a punch to the gut. Wedding's off. Expect a call from my lawyer. That was it. No explanation, no emotion, not even proper punctuation, just that cold period at the end, like I was merely a business deal she decided wasn't worth her time. I stood there frozen like an idiot. The cashier had to tell me twice that it was my turn. I remember mechanically paying for my items, driving home in complete silence, and then sitting in my apartment parking lot for about 15 minutes before I could even bring myself to go inside. The weirdest part? I wasn't crying or yelling. I was just quiet. The only thing I texted back was, "As you wish," a reference to The Princess Bride. She probably didn't even get. I knew what that text really meant, though. It wasn't just canceling our wedding. It was her saying, "Don't contact me. My lawyer will handle everything." I was being discarded like yesterday's garbage, and she thought she held all the cards, but she forgot something important. As I sat there on my couch staring at her text message, something clicked in my brain. The mortgage, the wedding fund, the joint accounts we had just started setting up, everything was still in progress. Nothing was finalized. So I made a decision. Before I even took off my code, I opened my laptop, logged into Chase Bank's mortgage portal, and withdrew my application. It took exactly 3 clicks. And just like that, her dreams of the perfect Bellevue townhouse collapsed. People might think that was petty. Maybe it was. But after 3 years of slowly erasing myself to become what she wanted, after all the sacrifices I'd made, this wasn't just about being petty. This was about keeping some of my dignity intact. Still, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The next few hours felt surreal. I kept expecting my phone to explode with calls and texts from Jessica demanding an explanation, but there was nothing. The silence was somehow worse than any angry confrontation would have been. It confirmed what I was starting to suspect. I had served my purpose, and now I was disposable. I barely slept that night. My mind raced, replaying every moment of our relationship, searching for clues I might have missed. Was it something I said or did? Had she been planning this all along? The questions kept piling up with no answers in sight. The next morning, I forced myself to go to work despite feeling like a zombie. My team lead took one look at me and asked if I was sick. I hesitated, then just said, "Jessica ended things." The sympathy in his eyes almost broke me. "Take the week off," he said quietly. "This project will still be here when you get back." I nodded gratefully and headed back home, stopping at a grocery store to pick up some comfort food. That's when I saw it. A bridal magazine featuring a model wearing the exact dress Jessica had chosen. I stood there in the checkout line staring at it, feeling this weird disconnect. Just yesterday, I was going to marry this woman. Today, she was a stranger who had decimated my life via text message. Back at my apartment, I started gathering Jessica's things. The clothes she kept at my place, her toiletries, a few books. It wasn't much considering we had been together for 3 years. It struck me then how little of herself she had actually invested in our life together. I had invested so much into our relationship, yet Jessica's presence in my home was minimal. She always insisted we spend time at her place because it was nicer, a red flag I had overlooked. I neatly boxed everything up, labeled it Jessica's things, and set it by the door. Then I finally did something I had been putting off for months. I called my brother, Alex. Our conversation was brief but healing. He didn't say, "I told you so," even though he had never fully trusted Jessica. He simply said, "I'm coming over, and I'm bringing pizza." That night, catching up with my brother, I felt a strange mix of devastation and relief. The devastation was obvious. My future had just imploded. But the relief took longer to understand. It felt like I had been holding my breath for 3 years, contorting myself to fit Jessica's vision. Now I could finally exhale. Less than 48 hours after receiving that text, I was sitting on my couch eating the same pizza rolls I had bought at the store when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail because I wasn't ready to deal with that stress. A minute later, a message appeared. "Hello, this is Rebecca Goldstein, attorney for Jessica Chambers. We urgently request a call back regarding your mortgage withdrawal, as this action may constitute breach of contract or financial interference. Please contact us immediately." I almost laughed at the urgency. Suddenly, her lawyer wasn't so cold and clinical anymore. It was funny how things changed when you hit people in the wallet. I didn't call back. Instead, I just waited. Sure enough, more calls and emails followed, all filled with increasing desperation. They weren't expecting me to fight back. Jessica, in her typical fashion, must have assumed I'd be completely destroyed, maybe even begging her to reconsider. But I wasn't. I was just done. The next day, I got a call from our mutual friend Kyle. He sounded awkward. "Hey man, did you really pull out of the house deal?" "Yep," I replied. "Okay, because Jessica's freaking out. Apparently, she had already ordered about $18,000 worth of custom furniture and told all her friends at work to start looking for places in the same neighborhood." I almost said, "Not my problem," but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to come across as cruel, even though I honestly could have. Kyle hesitated before adding, "She said you're being vindictive and that you're doing this to punish her. She even had the nerve to tell everyone at the office yesterday that I was financially abusing her by pulling out of the mortgage." That made me laugh out loud. Financially abusing her? The woman who never contributed a cent to our future home or wedding? The woman who just tried to dump me by text after 3 years together? "Kyle," I said, "she can say whatever she wants. I'm not buying a house with someone who breaks up with me by text message." There was a long pause before Kyle said something that really struck me. "Yeah, that's fair. But just so you know, she's been telling people different stories about why you guys broke up. To some, she's saying it was mutual, and to others, she's hinting that there were problems she couldn't talk about." It was strange. Man. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about those problems she was hinting at. What was she trying to imply? That I was abusive? Unfaithful? The fact that she was spinning different stories to different people showed me she was in damage control mode. But why the damage control if this was her decision? Something wasn't adding up. The days that followed were a strange mix of emotional numbness and moments of startling clarity. I found myself remembering conversations with Jessica that had seemed innocuous at the time, but now took on a sinister glow. Like the time she casually mentioned that her ex had been financially generous with her and how she'd expected more from him. Or how she reacted with barely concealed disappointment whenever I mentioned saving for retirement instead of spending on luxury items. I started going through old photos on my phone, pictures of us together at various events. It was like looking at strangers. In almost every shot, Jessica was perfectly posed, aware of the camera, while I looked slightly uncomfortable, as if I was trying too hard to fit into her world. When had I become so disconnected from myself? The financial reality hit hard, too. I checked my bank accounts, adding up how much I had spent on our relationship over the past 3 years. The total was staggering. Nearly $65,000 on trips she insisted we take, restaurants where the bill always mysteriously landed in front of me, gifts for her work milestones, and of course, the wedding fund. Meanwhile, her contributions had been minimal, occasionally cooking dinner or buying me birthday presents that were nice, but nowhere near equivalent to what I had spent. It wasn't just about the money, though. It was about the imbalance, the take with very little give. I had been so blinded by what I thought was love that I hadn't realized how one-sided our relationship had become. A week after the breakup text, I finally forced myself to cancel the wedding vendors. Each call was painful in its own way, as I explained that the wedding was off without going into details. Most vendors were understanding, though I lost some deposits along the way. One vendor, a small family-owned bakery that was set to make our cake, particularly stung. The owner, an older woman who had seemed genuinely excited about our design, sounded so disappointed. "You two seemed so in love when you came in for the tasting," she said softly. "I thought we were," was all I could reply. After canceling the last vendor, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat on my balcony, watching the Seattle rain. For the first time since the text, I felt tears welling up, not for Jessica, but for the future I thought I had. The life I had planned and lost, the person I had twisted myself into becoming. But beneath the grief, something else was stirring within me. A quiet determination. A realization that I had been given a chance to reclaim myself before making what would have been the biggest mistake of my life. As painful as this was, maybe it was also a gift. That's when my phone lit up with another notification. An email from the mortgage broker confirming the withdrawal of my application. The subject line read, "Application terminated. Future options available." It felt oddly prophetic. What Jessica didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had started to notice strange things in the weeks before her text. There were signs looking back. Late-night work emails that she'd hide her screen from. Unexplained client dinners that seemed to run suspiciously late. The way she'd immediately lock her phone when I walked into the room. I had noticed all of it. I just didn't want to believe what it might mean. But now, with everything falling apart, I felt like I was finally seeing clearly. So instead of replying to her lawyer or trying to salvage anything, I stayed quiet. I let them panic, let them wonder what my next move would be. And in that silence, the truth began to bubble up to the surface. 3 days after the text, there was a knock on my apartment door around 8 out in the evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was her father, Mr. Chambers. The last time I saw him was at dinner a month earlier when he gave an emotional speech about how proud he was to welcome me into their family. Now he just looked tired and embarrassed. He didn't even say hello before blurting out, "What's going on with the house?" I folded my arms and said, "I'm not buying a house with someone who tells me we're done by text and sends her lawyer to talk to me. Are you here as her representative?" His eyes darted down. "No, I'm here because she won't tell us anything straight. 1 minute, she's saying the wedding's off. Next, she's screaming about furniture invoices and credit pulls and how she's going to be humiliated in front of all her co-workers at Apex Marketing." For a second, I considered telling him everything, all my suspicions, all the red flags I'd been ignoring. But I didn't. I just said she ended it. I respected that she could handle the consequences of her actions for once in her life. He nodded slowly, then muttered something like, "I told her not to do this," and walked off. I watched him leave, and a strange calm settled over me. But the real bombshell was about to drop. The next morning, I got a call from my brother, Alex. We were always close growing up, but Jessica had successfully driven a wedge between us over the past year with her comments about him being too blue-collar and not fitting in with our new social circle. I hadn't talked to him in almost a month. "Hey bro," he said, sounding hesitant. "I heard about what happened with Jessica from Kyle. Listen, there's something I need to tell you that I probably should have said months ago." My heart started racing. "What is it?" There was a long pause. "Remember that renovation job I was doing at that fancy apartment complex downtown? The Cascade Heights place? Yeah, well, I saw Jessica there with some guy. They were going into his apartment together looking real cozy." I didn't know what to think. Maybe it was a work thing, but the way they were touching each other. I took a picture just in case, but I wasn't sure if I should tell you. Didn't want to mess things up if I was wrong. He texted me the picture while we were still on the phone. It was definitely Jessica, wearing a dress I'd never seen, with some tall dude in an expensive suit. His hand was on the small of her back in a way that wasn't just friendly. The timestamp showed it was from 2 months ago. "The dude's name is Ryan," Alex said. "I asked around and he seems pretty well connected. Funny enough, the maintenance guy in our building turns out to be a hotshot investment banker on the side. Drives an Aston Martin. What a real douchebag. He's the type who loves to brag about his watch collection." Ryan. The name clicked immediately. Jessica had mentioned him a few times, always referring to him as just a client from her marketing firm. She said he was difficult but important. I guess he was important. After we hung up, I went into full investigation mode. I pulled up her Instagram. Most of her posts were suddenly private. First red flag. But I could still see her tagged photos. There was one from a charity gala 3 weeks back, the same weekend she claimed to be at a girls' retreat at a spa. She wasn't in the photo, but Ryan was, and you could just see her arm and part of her dress in the corner, the same dress from Alex's picture. I kept digging. I checked our shared cloud photo account that we'd set up for wedding planning. In the recently deleted folder, I found several selfies of her that I'd never seen before, clearly taken in an apartment that wasn't mine. It was a fancy place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Space Needle, exactly the kind of place a hotshot banker would have. The pieces were starting to fit together. The sudden complaints about my salary, the constant comparisons to her friends' husbands who were really going places, the increasing pressure to move to an expensive neighborhood we couldn't afford, and the comments about how I should dress better and network more. She wasn't just cheating. She was upgrading, and I was the stepping stone that was no longer needed. I took a day to process all this, to let the anger and hurt work through my system. Then I did something I hadn't done in nearly a year. I called my old college buddy, Trevor, who had been offering me a job at his engineering firm in Denver, a job I'd turned down because Jessica insisted we build roots in Seattle. "Hey, stranger," he said when he picked up. To what do I owe the pleasure? How's that job offer looking? I asked. There was a pause. Then he laughed. You finally dumped the princess? Job still open, man. $125,000 plus relocation. When can you start? For the first time in days, I smiled. How's next month sound? The conversation with Trevor felt like a lifeline in a stormy sea. He didn't press for details about the breakup, but instead launched into enthusiastic descriptions of the projects I'd be working on, the team I'd be joining, and the incredible hiking trails just an hour from Denver. It was exactly what I needed. A glimpse of a future that had nothing to do with Jessica, or the life I had been trying to build with her. After we hung up, I felt energized for the first time in days. I pulled out a notepad and started making lists. Things I needed to do to leave Seattle, items to pack or sell, people to contact. It felt good to be moving forward, to have a concrete plan that was entirely my own. That night, I allowed myself to really think about the implications of what I'd discovered. Jessica hadn't just been cheating. She'd been methodically constructing a backup plan, a better option in her eyes, all while pushing me to invest in a financial commitment that would have crippled me if she'd gotten her way. The calculated nature of it was what hurt the most. I found myself wondering how long she'd been seeing this Ryan guy, and if she'd been with him before she accepted my proposal. Had our entire engagement been a farce, a convenient arrangement until something better came along? The questions made my stomach turn, and sleep eluded me that night. Instead, I found myself looking through our text history, searching for clues. There they were, scattered throughout seemingly innocent messages. Mentions of late meetings that coincided with dates on her Instagram posts at events I wasn't invited to. 2 cancellations of our plans at the last minute for work emergencies. And increasingly frequent complaints about my lifestyle choices, my financial decisions, and even my hobbies. By morning, I was exhausted but clear-headed. I drafted a formal email to my landlord giving notice on my apartment. I applied for a Colorado driver's license online. I sent emails to the few friends I'd maintained despite Jessica's disapproval, letting them know I was moving. Each action was a step away from the mess she'd left me in, a reclaiming of my independence. But even as I was moving forward, Jessica's presence lingered like a ghost. Her lawyer sent another email, more demanding than the first, insisting that I had legal and moral obligations regarding the house purchase. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend without responding. Her father's words, "I told her not to do this," kept echoing in my mind. What exactly had he warned her against? Breaking things off or the way she'd done it? It was becoming clear that Jessica's carefully constructed image was beginning to crack under pressure. And I suspected that the truth about her was going to come out soon. The revelation of Jessica's affair with Ryan wasn't the only secret about to come to light. Just when I thought things couldn't get more dramatic, my bank called the next morning. It wasn't an automated message. It was an actual fraud prevention specialist. Apparently, someone had attempted to withdraw the entire $22,500 from our joint wedding savings account at 11:37 p.m. the previous night. The transaction was flagged as suspicious because it was trying to transfer all funds to a private checking account under only Jessica's name. I immediately froze the account and requested records of all recent access attempts. While I was still on the phone with the bank representative, my email pinged with a new message. The subject line read, "Urgent regarding wedding funds." It was from Rebecca Goldstein, Jessica's lawyer. "Mr. Thompson, my client is concerned about the funds held in the joint savings account for your now canceled wedding. As she made several payments into this account and paid various vendors directly, she believes she is entitled to reclaim a significant portion." I stared at the email in disbelief. This was a complete fabrication. I had every bank statement and every deposit record showing that 100% of that money came from my account. Jessica hadn't contributed a single penny. She'd always kept her money separate, claiming it was smarter financially for her to handle certain expenses directly. But now she was trying to steal my savings and claim it was partially hers. I forwarded the email to Trevor, who had a brother-in-law that practiced family law. His response was immediate. "Save everything. Every email, every text, get a lawyer yesterday." So I did. That afternoon, I consulted with Cher Levan, reportedly the toughest family law attorney in Seattle. Her retainer wasn't cheap, $5,000, but the moment I explained my situation and showed her the evidence I'd gathered, she took the case. "Mr. Thompson," she said with a smile that reminded me of a shark, "you've been remarkably restrained given the circumstances, but it's time to protect yourself. And Miss Chambers is clearly attempting to commit fraud." She drafted a formal cease and desist letter to Jessica's lawyer that same day, including all the bank records proving the money was solely mine, as well as screenshots of the attempted unauthorized withdrawal. She also advised me to completely cut contact with Jessica and let everything go through proper legal channels. That night my phone exploded with notifications. Jessica had tried calling me 8 times in a row. When I didn't answer, she started texting, "I can't believe you got a lawyer. We need to talk about this like adults. You're being irrational. Did you freeze the account? I need that money for the cancellation fees." I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I sent everything to Cher and blocked Jessica's number. The next morning, Kyle called again. He sounded stressed. "Dude, Jessica came into the office today absolutely livid. She was telling anyone who would listen that you're trying to bankrupt her, that you're withholding her money for the wedding vendors who are threatening to sue her." "That's interesting," I replied calmly, "considering I have records showing I paid for everything and she contributed nothing." "Yeah, well, there's more," Kyle said, his voice dropping. "She's also telling people you were controlling, and that's why she had to end things suddenly. That you monitored her spending and isolated her from friends." My blood ran cold. She was trying to paint me as the abuser when she was the one who had controlled every aspect of our relationship, criticized my friends, and driven away my family. "Kyle, you've known me for years. Do you believe that?" "Of course not," he said quickly. "But people at work don't know you like I do. And Jessica can be convincing when she wants to be." After we hung up, I forwarded this new information to Cher. Her response was immediate. "This changes our approach. We need witness statements from friends and family about her behavior, and we need to address these false accusations before they spread further." The next 48 hours were a blur of legal preparations. Cher had me gather testimonials from friends about Jessica's controlling behavior. My brother provided a sworn statement about seeing her with Ryan. I compiled a complete timeline of our relationship, including every red flag I could remember in hindsight. The criticisms, the isolation tactics, the financial manipulations. While this was happening, Jessica's lawyer sent another email, this time with a completely different tone. "My client is distressed by the escalation of what she viewed as a private matter. She is willing to forego any claim to the joint account if you will agree to assist with the house situation." Translation: Jessica realized she was caught in a lie about the money and was now trying to use it as leverage for the house. Cher's response was beautiful in its simplicity. "My client has documented evidence of Miss Chambers' attempt to defraud him, her unauthorized access to funds that are indisputably his alone, and her subsequent defamation of his character to mutual acquaintances. We are fully prepared to pursue this matter to its legal conclusion, if necessary. There will be no negotiation regarding the house, which was never purchased, or any funds, which belong solely to my client." That's when things really exploded. I spent that evening packing up more of my belongings, sorting through years of accumulated items, and deciding what was worth taking to Denver. The process was oddly therapeutic. I evaluated each item, asking myself if it truly brought value to my life, or if it was just something I'd acquired to please Jessica. The expensive watch she insisted I needed for client meetings? Selling it. The pretentious art books I had never actually read? Donation pile. My beloved collection of sci-fi novels that Jessica had banished to a closet because they were childish? Definitely coming with me to Denver. As I worked, my phone continued to vibrate with messages from unknown numbers. Friends of Jessica's, I assumed, trying to guilt me into responding. I ignored them all. Sherry had been clear. No contact except through legal channels. Around midnight, exhausted but satisfied with the progress I'd made, I checked my email one last time before bed. There was a message from an address I didn't recognize, with the subject line, "You should know the truth about Jessica." My finger hovered over the delete button. It could easily be another manipulation tactic, but curiosity won out. The email was from a woman named Megan, who claimed to be a former co-worker of Jessica's at her previous company. According to Megan, Jessica had a history of latching on to successful men, using them to advance her career or social standing, then discarding them when someone better came along. She did the same thing to her last boyfriend, a doctor who bought her a car and paid for her apartment renovations. When he proposed, she suddenly found reasons to break it off. 2 weeks later, she was dating her boss, Megan wrote. I stared at the screen, unsure what to make of this information. Was it real or just someone with a grudge? I forwarded it to Sherry without comment and finally went to bed, my mind racing with possibilities. The next morning brought a surprising development. A voicemail from Rebecca Goldstein, Jessica's lawyer, asking to speak with Sherry regarding a potential resolution. The tone was markedly different from her previous communications, less demanding and more conciliatory. Something had shifted. I called Sherry immediately to relay the message. "Interesting timing," she remarked. "I was just about to call you." I did some digging on Ms. Chambers last night, and it seems your situation isn't unique. There's a pattern here that could be very relevant if this goes to court. The email from Megan? I asked. Partly that, but there's more. Let's just say your ex-fiancée has left quite a trail of financial entanglements behind her. I've got a call scheduled with Ms. Goldstein this afternoon. In the meantime, how's the packing coming along? I smiled at her subtle reminder to keep moving forward with my plans, regardless of the legal drama. Making progress. Denver is starting to feel real. Good, Sherry said firmly. The best revenge is living well, Mr. Thompson. Remember that. As I hung up, my doorbell rang. Another unexpected visitor. This roller coaster showed no signs of slowing down. Later that night, around 10:05, I received a Facebook message from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, just a name. Ryan Mitchell. We should talk. I don't want to be part of whatever game she's playing. My hands were shaking as I replied. Talk about what? His response came quickly. About Jessica. About the lies she's been telling both of us. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown the next morning. I arrived early, partly out of curiosity and partly to scope out the place first in case this was some kind of trap. But right on time, in walked the guy from the photo. Tall, perfectly styled hair, expensive watch glinting on his wrist. Classic finance, bro. He spotted me and walked over, extending his hand. Mike, I'm Ryan. We got our coffees and found a quiet corner. For a minute, we just sized each other up awkwardly. Then he spoke. I need to know something first. When exactly did you and Jessica break up? 4 days ago, I said. She texted me saying the wedding was off. He looked genuinely surprised. She told me you two broke up months ago. That you were just finalizing the house purchase out of guilt because her family had already invested in it. I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach. That's a lie. We were engaged until the day she sent that text. The wedding was scheduled for June. Ryan ran his hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Jesus, we've been seeing each other for almost 3 months. She told me her ex was clingy and wouldn't accept the breakup. That's why she couldn't post about us on social media yet. 3 months? I echoed, doing the math in my head. That covered our entire house purchase ordeal. The hunting period, the final venue selections, and even the cake tasting we had done together. There was so much to process. There's more, Ryan said, looking uncomfortable. She told me you had issues, that you were controlling and even physically intimidating sometimes. That's why she had to end things quietly. I felt like I'd been punched. That's absolutely not true. I never laid a hand on her, never even raised my voice. Ask anyone who knows me. Ryan nodded slowly. I believe you. Things haven't been adding up lately. Last week, she told me she needed $15,000 for some investment opportunity. She got really upset when I hesitated. Then yesterday she called, crying about how her vengeful ex was trying to ruin her financially and professionally. He gave a humorless laugh. I'm guessing that's you. My lawyer sent a cease and desist after she tried to empty our joint account and then lied about contributing to it, I explained. We talked for almost 2 hours, comparing stories, timelines, and the lies she'd told each of us. The picture that emerged was worse than I had imagined. Jessica hadn't just been cheating. She had been living a completely double life, playing us both for financial gain. She told Ryan I was abusive to explain why she was sometimes unavailable. When she was with me, she claimed to be at work events when she was actually with him. She had been pushing me to buy a house I couldn't afford, while simultaneously pressuring him to invest in her business ideas. As we were about to leave, Ryan hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. Last month, she started talking about being pregnant. My blood ran cold. Pregnant? I echoed. Yeah, but when I started asking questions about doctor's appointments and timelines, she backtracked and said it was too early to tell for sure. I thought it was strange. I thanked him for meeting me and for being honest. As we stood to leave, he looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. We both dodged a bullet, man. But you were the brave one who actually called her bluff. Armed with this new information, I met with Cher again. She advised documenting everything from my conversation with Ryan, especially the false abuse allegations, which were particularly serious. We have enough to file a defamation suit, she said. But first, let's see how they respond to our initial position. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, I received another call from Kyle. He sounded freaked out. Dude, the craziest thing just happened at work. Jessica got a call while we were in a meeting, and she ran out looking like she'd seen a ghost. 20 minutes later, she came back, packed up her desk, and left. Her boss is saying she's taking personal leave effective immediately. What did you do? I told him about meeting Ryan and comparing notes on her lies. Kyle was stunned into silence. Holy, so the guy actually contacted you? Wow. There's more, I said, and explained about the pregnancy claims and the abuse allegations. All of it. Damn, Kyle whispered. I knew she could be manipulative, but this is next level. The next morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mike, it's Rebecca Goldstein, Jessica's attorney. I need to speak with you directly. I immediately replied that all communication should go through my lawyer, but she cut me off. I'm no longer representing Ms. Chambers. I resigned from her case this morning after discovering my client provided materially false information. I cannot and will not be party to fraud or defamation. I was speechless. Her own lawyer had dropped her. Later that day, I received an email from Jessica's work address. The subject line simply read, "Please." Against Sherry's advice, I opened it. Mike, I know I've made terrible mistakes. I'm seeing a therapist now and taking medication for my issues. I never meant for things to go this far. Ryan told me you two met. I know how it looks, but it wasn't like that. I was confused and scared about our future. Please don't file any lawsuits. My parents are devastated. My job is on the line. I'll do anything to make this right. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Cher with the note, I think she's finally realizing actions have consequences. The final communication came a week later, not from Jessica, but from her father. He asked if we could meet at a small park near my apartment. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Mr. Chambers looked like he had aged a decade in 2 weeks. The confident businessman was gone, replaced by a worried father with dark circles under his eyes. Mike, he began, his voice rough, I owe you an apology, a big one. Jessica, she's not well. She's been diagnosed with some serious issues. That's not an excuse for what she did to you. But I want you to know that the person you thought you knew, she wasn't. Real in many ways. He explained that Jessica had been struggling with mental health issues since college, but had always refused treatment. The image she projected was a facade that required increasing effort to maintain. We've convinced her to enter a residential treatment program, he said. It's the only way forward. But before she left, she asked me to give you this. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $2,500. It was the exact amount of the wedding fund, along with a handwritten note that simply read, I'm sorry for the pain I caused. You deserved better. We parted with an awkward handshake that turned into a brief hug. As he walked away, he turned back once and said, By the way, congratulations on the job in Denver. A fresh start sounds like exactly what you need.